Ethan Parker's life is one of quiet struggles and relentless hope. At just 15, he shoulders the weight of his family's financial burdens, scavenging cans near the airport fence, while his mother, Anna, works tirelessly to keep them afloat. Their apartment walls hold the echoes of unpaid bills and eviction threats, a life that feels like it's closing in on them. One day, while collecting cans, Ethan notices a man tampering with a private jet on the tarmac. His instincts tell him something isn't right. Desperate to prevent a tragedy, he pushes past his fears and tries to warn the jet's owner, William Thompson, a wealthy businessman. At first, no one listens, but when the truth comes to light, Ethan's courage saves lives. Moved by Ethan's bravery, Mr. Thompson offers him and Anna a lifeline. A stable job for Anna, and an opportunity for Ethan to explore his budding fascination with aviation. As Ethan steps into a new world of mechanics, flight schools, and mentors who believe in him, he begins to dream of a future that once seemed impossible. But the journey is far from easy. Ethan faces self-doubt, grueling lessons, and setbacks that threaten to pull him back into the shadows of his past. As he learns the value of persistence and the strength of unexpected kindness, Ethan discovers that the sky isn't just a distant dream, it's a place he's meant to conquer. Ethan Parker wiped sweat from his forehead as the blazing summer sun bore down on him. The broken concrete of the alley near the airport shimmered with heat, and the air smelled faintly of oil and asphalt. Ethan adjusted the strap of the worn-out backpack slung over his shoulder, its contents clinking faintly as he walked. Inside were aluminum cans and bits of scrap he had collected from the roadside and trash bins. This had become his daily ritual, a 13-year-old boy scavenging to help keep his family afloat. His sneakers, soles worn thin from years of use, scraped against the ground as he moved toward the fence lining the small airport. He could see the sleek private jets glinting in the sunlight, their engines humming as they prepared for takeoff. Ethan always paused to watch them. To him, they represented another world, a place where people didn't have to worry about overdue rent or an empty fridge. He imagined the passengers inside, sipping drinks, talking about exotic destinations. Ethan wasn't envious exactly, but the sight of those jets always left a lump in his throat. His own world was so small, so constrained by the weight of his mother's struggles. The apartment Ethan shared with his mother, Anna, was a cramped two-bedroom unit in a dilapidated building on the edge of town. The walls were thin, and the floors creaked with every step. The kitchen sink dripped constantly, no matter how many times Anna tried to fix it with duct tape and determination. Bills cluttered the counter, their bright red notices impossible to ignore. Anna worked long hours cleaning offices, her hands often raw from scrubbing and her body perpetually exhausted. Despite her best efforts, they were months behind on rent. Ethan overheard her conversations with the landlord, Mr. Lopez, who had grown less patient with each passing day. "You have 1 month, Anna," Mr. Lopez had said just the night before, his voice low and stern. "If you can't pay by then, you're out." Ethan had pretended to be asleep on the couch, but he caught every word. The fear in his mother's voice as she apologized again and again made his stomach churn. He hated feeling helpless, hated seeing the worry etched into her face. As he bent to pick up a can near the airport fence, Ethan noticed something unusual. A man dressed in dark clothes was crouched near one of the smaller jets, fiddling with something near the wing. Ethan squinted, watching as the man glanced around nervously before disappearing behind the plane. A prickle of unease crawled up Ethan's spine. He wasn't sure what the man was doing, but it didn't look right. He scanned the area, spotting a security guard leaning against a golf cart a few yards away. Gathering his courage, Ethan approached. "Excuse me, sir," Ethan said, his voice hesitant. The guard looked up, his face already twisted with annoyance. "What is it, kid?" "There's a guy over there," Ethan said, pointing toward the jet. "He was messing with the plane. It didn't look like he was supposed to be there." The guard sighed, adjusting his cap. Probably maintenance. Go on, kid, don't hang around here. But, listen, the guard interrupted, his voice sharp. I said it's nothing. Get lost before I call someone to deal with you. Ethan's cheeks burned with frustration as he turned away. The guard wasn't going to listen. What could a kid like him possibly know? He walked back to his collection spot, but his thoughts were heavy. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. That evening, Ethan returned home with his backpack heavier than usual, the weight of the cans matched only by the weight in his chest. When he opened the door to their apartment, the faint smell of cleaning chemicals greeted him. Anna was at the kitchen table, her shoulders slumped as she stared at a stack of bills. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, mustering a tired smile. "How was today?" Ethan set his backpack down and shrugged. "Same as usual. Found a lot of cans, though." Anna nodded, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She reached for a piece of paper and held it up a notice with bold letters at the top. Eviction warning. "We have 1 month," Anna said quietly. Her voice trembled despite her effort to stay calm. "I'm going to pick up extra shifts. We'll figure it out, okay?" Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. He wanted to say something reassuring, to tell her it would be fine, but the words felt hollow. Instead, he walked over and hugged her. Anna wrapped her arms around him, her hands trembling slightly. "We'll keep going, Ethan. We always do." The next morning, Ethan was back near the airport, determined to shake off the unease from the day before. As he bent to pick up another can, he heard voices nearby. Glancing up, he spotted a group of well-dressed people heading toward one of the jets, the same one he had seen the man tampering with. Ethan's stomach clenched. He scanned the area for the suspicious man, but he was nowhere in sight. The passengers were laughing, chatting, completely unaware. Ethan's heart raced. He didn't know what to do. What if something happened to them because no one had listened? Before he could second-guess himself, Ethan took off running. "Wait!" he shouted, his voice cracking. "Don't get on that plane. It's not safe!" The group turned, startled. A tall man in a crisp suit stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Ethan skidded to a stop, panting. "Someone was messing with the plane yesterday," he said, pointing toward the jet. "I told the guard, but he didn't believe me. You have to check it." Security guards were already rushing toward him, their faces stern. "Hey, kid! What are you doing?" The tall man held up a hand, stopping them. "Let him speak," he said firmly. Ethan swallowed, his heart pounding. "I saw a guy near the wing yesterday. He was unscrewing something. He wasn't wearing a uniform. I think he did something to the plane." The man studied Ethan for a long moment, his gaze sharp. Then he turned to one of his assistants. "Get maintenance over here. I want every inch of that plane inspected before we board." The assistant nodded, pulling out a phone. The guards held Ethan by the arms, but their grip was loose now. He stood there, his breath catching in his chest as he watched the maintenance crew swarm the plane. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last. Finally, one of the workers shouted, "There's something wrong with the fuel line." The tall man's expression darkened. He turned back to Ethan, his face a mix of gratitude and something else respect. "You just saved our lives," he said, his voice steady. "What's your name?" "Ethan," he replied, his voice barely a whisper. "Thank you, Ethan." The man reached into his pocket and handed him a business card. "Come see me tomorrow. I think I owe you more than just thanks." Ethan stared at the card, his mind reeling. The guards released him, stepping back as the man walked away, already giving orders to his team. As Ethan turned to leave, his hands trembling, he felt something new bloom in his chest. Hope. Ethan sat at the small kitchen table, turning the glossy business card over in his fingers. The name William Thompson was embossed in bold letters, followed by a phone number and the title CEO, Horizon Ventures. Ethan had no idea what Horizon Ventures was, but the encounter earlier that day still felt like a dream. He had stopped a potential disaster, and someone had really thanked him. He placed the card on the table and glanced at his mom. Anna stood by the stove, stirring a pot of canned soup. She hummed quietly, her movements tired but steady. Ethan could see the faint lines of worry etched deeper into her face since last night's conversation with Mr. Lopez. "Mom," Ethan said softly. Anna turned, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "What is it, sweetheart?" Ethan hesitated, then picked up the card. "Something happened at the airport today." Anna frowned, walking over to the table. "What do you mean? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Ethan said quickly. He held out the card. "There was this guy messing with one of the planes. I told the passengers before they got on. It turned out I was right. Something was wrong with the plane. The man in charge gave me this." Anna stared at the card, her brow furrowing. "William Thompson? Ethan, this is serious. Why would someone like him give you his card?" Ethan shrugged. "He said I saved their lives. He wants me to come seize him tomorrow." Anna sat down across from him, her hands trembling slightly as she held the card. "Sweetheart, I don't know. What if it's some kind of mistake?" "It's not, Mom. He listened to me when no one else would," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Maybe this could help us." Anna looked at her son, her tired eyes softening. She reached out, covering his hand with hers. "If you think it's worth it, then we'll go. But we'll be careful, okay?" Ethan nodded, relief washing over him. "Okay." The next morning, Ethan and Anna stood outside a tall office building downtown. The glass facade reflected the blue sky, and people in business attire rushed past them, clutching briefcases and coffee cups. Anna fidgeted with the hem of her cardigan, looking up at the towering structure. "This place is impressive," she said, her voice tinged with awe. Ethan felt a knot of nerves in his stomach. "Yeah, it is." They stepped inside, the cool air a stark contrast to the heat outside. The lobby was sleek, with polished floors and modern furniture. A receptionist greeted them with a warm smile. "We're here to see Mr. Thompson," Ethan said, his voice cracking slightly. The receptionist nodded, typing into her computer. "Of course, he's expecting you. Please take the elevator to the 15th floor." Ethan glanced at Anna, who gave him a small, reassuring smile. Together, they rode the elevator up, the numbers ticking higher. When the doors opened, an assistant greeted them and led them to a large wooden door. She knocked once, then opened it, motioning them inside. William Thompson stood by the window, dressed in another immaculate suit. He turned as they entered, a smile spreading across his face. "Ethan, and you must be his mother. Please, come in." Anna nodded, her voice shaky. "Thank you for inviting us, Mr. Thompson." "Call me William," he said, gesturing to the chairs in front of his desk. "Have a seat." The room was spacious, with bookshelves lining the walls and framed photographs of planes and landscapes on display. Ethan couldn't help but feel out of place in his second-hand clothes, but William's kind demeanor eased some of his tension. "I wanted to thank you again, Ethan," William said, sitting across from them. "What you did yesterday took courage. You saw something wrong and spoke up when it mattered most. Not many people, let alone kids, would have done that." Ethan felt his cheeks flush. "I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." William nodded, his expression thoughtful. "That's exactly why I wanted to meet you. But first, I want to know more about you and your family. What's your situation?" Anna hesitated, glancing at Ethan before speaking. "We've had a tough time recently. I work as a cleaner, but it's been hard to make ends meet. We're behind on rent and—" "We're being evicted," Ethan blurted, unable to hold it in. Anna's face reddened, and she looked down at her lap. "Ethan," she whispered. William leaned forward, his gaze softening. "I'm sorry to hear that. It's not easy being in that position, especially when you're doing everything you can." Anna nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're trying, but it feels like it's never enough." William sat back, tapping his fingers on the desk as if deep in thought. Finally he said, I believe in rewarding people who do the right thing. Ethan, you made a difference yesterday, and I want to return the favor. He turned to Anna. I'd like to offer you a job at one of my office buildings. The pay is fair, and it comes with benefits. It's yours, if you want it. Anna's mouth fell open, and she covered it with her hand. I don't know what to say. Thank you. William smiled. There's more. I'll cover your back rent and make sure you're not evicted. You and Ethan deserve a fresh start. Tears welled in Anna's eyes, and she reached for Ethan's hand, squeezing it tightly. Thank you. This means everything to us. William turned back to Ethan. As for you, young man, I'd like to invite you to visit an aviation workshop I sponsor. It's a place where mechanics and engineers work on planes. I think you'd enjoy it. Ethan's eyes widened. Really? I can go there? William chuckled. Yes, I'll arrange for you to meet one of the lead mechanics. He's a good man, and I think he could teach you a lot. Ethan nodded eagerly, his heart pounding with excitement. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Call me William, he said with a wink. And thank you, Ethan. You reminded me yesterday why it's important to listen to every voice, no matter how small. As they left the office, Ethan and Anna stepped into the bright sunlight, their spirits lighter than they had been in months. Ethan looked at his mother, who was smiling through tears. Mom, this could change everything, he said, his voice filled with hope. Anna nodded, pulling him into a hug. It already has. The walk back to their apartment felt different. Ethan noticed things he usually ignored, the cracks in the sidewalk, the birds chirping on a wire, the faint hum of cars in the distance. For the first time in a long time, he felt lighter, as if the weight pressing on his chest had finally shifted. His mom, Anna, walked beside him, holding the strap of her purse with trembling fingers. Every so often, she glanced at him with a small, disbelieving smile. It was as if she, too, was struggling to grasp the reality of what had just happened. When they reached their building, the cracked stucco walls and peeling paint looked the same as ever. But something inside Ethan had changed. As they stepped into their apartment, the eviction notices still pinned to the fridge seemed less like a death sentence and more like a challenge they might overcome. I can't believe this, Anna murmured, sinking into one of their mismatched chairs at the kitchen table. She held her head in her hands, her voice trembling. A job. Rent paid. Ethan, this feels like a miracle. Ethan sat across from her, the faint hum of traffic outside their window filling the silence. I told you Mr. Thompson wasn't like everyone else, he said, a hint of pride in his voice. Anna looked up, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. You were right. I don't know how to thank him, or you for that matter. You started all this. Ethan shook his head. I just wanted to help. I couldn't stand there and let something bad happen. Anna reached across the table, placing her hand over his. Her grip was firm, grounding. You did more than that, Ethan. You changed our lives, and I am so proud of you. The following week, Anna started her new job at one of Mr. Thompson's office buildings. For the first time in years, she had a consistent schedule and co-workers who treated her kindly. The pay was better than anything she'd earned before, and it came with benefits, a word that felt foreign and luxurious to her. Ethan noticed the difference almost immediately. Anna began holding herself a little taller, her movements less frantic. She no longer spent nights hunched over the kitchen table, tallying numbers with furrowed brows. For Ethan, the changes came in a different way. True to his word, William Thompson arranged for Ethan to visit an aviation workshop. When the day arrived, Ethan stood outside the large hangar, his heart pounding in his chest. The workshop buzzed with activity. Mechanics in coveralls moved between planes, tools in hand, their voices carrying over the sound of clanking metal and the occasional whir of machinery. The scent of oil and grease hung thick in the air. A man in his 40s with a stocky build and weathered hands approached Ethan. He had kind eyes and a smile that put Ethan at ease immediately. You must be Ethan, he said, extending a hand. I'm Steve Harris. I run this place. Ethan shook his hand, feeling a little out of place in his faded jeans and sneakers. Yeah, that's me. Thanks for letting me come, Steve chuckled, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. William told me about what you did at the airport. That was brave. We could use more people like you around here. Ethan felt his cheeks flush. I just did what I thought was right. Well, that's more than a lot of people can say, Steve replied. Come on, let me show you around. The hangar was massive, with planes in various stages of maintenance scattered throughout. Steve introduced Ethan to several of the mechanics, each of whom greeted him with a nod or a warm smile. They were busy, their hands covered in grease and their overalls stained, but they seemed genuinely happy to be there. This is where the magic happens, Steve said, as they stopped at a workbench cluttered with tools and parts. You see this? He held up a small metal piece. Ethan nodded, leaning in. What is it? It's part of the fuel line. Small, isn't it? Steve said, turning the piece in his hand. But without this little guy, a plane doesn't go anywhere. That's what we do here, make sure every piece works like it's supposed to. Ethan's curiosity sparked. He picked up another piece from the workbench, inspecting it closely. So, everything matters? Even the tiny parts? Especially the tiny parts, Steve said with a grin. Want to learn how this one works? Ethan's eyes lit up. Yeah, I'd like that. Steve spent the next hour showing Ethan how to connect different components, explaining their functions in simple terms. It was like piecing together a puzzle, and Ethan found himself completely engrossed. When Ethan returned home that evening, his hands were still faintly stained with oil, and his mind buzzed with everything he'd learned. Anna looked up from the couch as he walked in, her face lighting up. How was it? She asked, setting aside the book she had been reading. Ethan grinned, dropping his backpack by the door. It was amazing. Steve, he's the guy who runs the place, showed me how the fuel lines work. He said I picked it up fast. Anna smiled, her eyes soft. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I think I want to go back, Ethan said, sitting down beside her. I want to learn more. Maybe even, I don't know, be part of it someday. Anna reached over, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. You can do anything you set your mind to, Ethan. If this is what you want, I'll support you every step of the way. Ethan leaned into her touch, feeling a warmth that chased away the shadows of the past few months. For the first time in what felt like forever, he could see a future, one that wasn't clouded by worry and uncertainty. That night, Ethan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind replayed the day's events, the hum of the hangar, the clatter of tools, Steve's steady voice explaining each part. He thought about Mr. Thompson's kindness, about how a single act of courage had set all of this in motion. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was starting to dream again. Ethan adjusted the strap of his backpack as he stepped off the bus. The aviation workshop loomed ahead, its massive hangar doors wide open like the jaws of some mechanical beast. Inside, the hum of activity reached his ears, voices calling out instructions, the clatter of tools, and the occasional roar of an engine starting up. It was chaotic and alive, a far cry from the stillness of his apartment or the quiet streets near the airport where he used to collect cans. Steve Harris was waiting for him just inside the hangar, leaning casually against a workbench. When he spotted Ethan, he raised a hand in greeting. Morning, kid," Steve said, his grin warm and welcoming. "You ready to get your hands dirty today?" Ethan grinned back, though nerves churned in his stomach. "Yeah, I'm ready." Steve led Ethan to a smaller plane stationed near the corner of the hangar. Its sleek silver body gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Several mechanics were clustered around it, each focused on their tasks. Ethan's heart thumped as he approached, feeling like an outsider among these skilled professionals. "This here's our training project," Steve said, gesturing to the plane. "We use it to teach new folks the basics. Today, I want you to help us check the landing gear." Ethan nodded, his throat dry. He knelt beside Steve as the older man explained how to inspect the components, pointing out what to look for and how each part fit together. "It's not as complicated as it looks," Steve said, handing Ethan a wrench. "Take your time, and don't be afraid to ask questions." At first, Ethan's movements were hesitant. His hands trembled as he tightened bolts and checked for wear, worried he might mess something up. But as the minutes ticked by, his confidence grew. The work felt natural, like solving a puzzle where every piece had its place. One of the mechanics, a woman named Carla, paused to watch him. "Not bad for a first-timer," she said, her voice kind. Ethan looked up, surprised. "You think so?" Carla nodded. "Absolutely. Just keep at it, and you'll get the hang of it in no time." Her words bolstered Ethan's spirits, and he found himself smiling as he worked. By lunchtime, Ethan's hands were streaked with grease, and his arms ached from crouching and reaching. Steve handed him a sandwich from a cooler and motioned for him to sit on a stack of crates. "So," Steve said, unwrapping his own sandwich, "what do you think so far?" Ethan took a bite, chewing thoughtfully before answering. "It's incredible. I didn't know how much went into making a plane work. It's like every little piece matters." Steve nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "That's right. Planes are like people, Ethan. They need all their parts working together to stay in the air. And sometimes, it's the smallest things that make the biggest difference." Ethan considered this, thinking back to the fuel line part Steve had shown him on his first visit. It was strange to think that something so tiny could mean the difference between flight and disaster. Steve leaned back, crossing his arms. "William told me a bit about your situation. He said you've had a tough time." Ethan looked down, unsure how to respond. "Hey," Steve said gently, "there's no shame in it. A lot of us here have been through rough patches. What matters is what you do next." Ethan nodded, meeting Steve's steady gaze. "I just want to help my mom. She's been through so much, and I want to make things better for her." Steve's expression softened. "You're a good kid, Ethan, and you've got a lot of potential. If you stick with this, I think you could go far." The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Ethan shadowed Steve and Carla as they worked on different parts of the plane, absorbing everything they taught him. By the time the sun dipped low in the sky, he was exhausted but exhilarated. As Ethan packed up his things to leave, Steve walked him to the edge of the hangar. "You did good today," Steve said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Come back whenever you're ready to learn more. The door's always open." "Thanks, Steve," Ethan said, his heart swelling with gratitude. As he walked toward the bus stop, Ethan glanced back at the workshop. The sight of the planes, the glow of the lights spilling onto the tarmac, it all felt like a glimpse of a world he wanted to be part of. Back at home, Anna was waiting for him at the kitchen table, a cup of tea in her hands. She looked up as he walked in, her face lighting up with a smile. "How was it?" she asked, her voice eager. Ethan dropped his backpack and slid into the chair across from her. "It was amazing, Mom. I learned so much today. Steve said I did a good job." Anna reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I can tell this means a lot to you." Ethan nodded, his eyes shining. "It does. I think this is what I want to do. Work with planes. Maybe even fly them one day." Anna's breath caught, and she blinked rapidly. "Fly them?" Ethan hesitated, suddenly feeling foolish for saying it out loud. "I mean, maybe. It's just an idea." But Anna smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. "Ethan, you can do anything you set your mind to. If this is your dream, I'll support you every step of the way." Ethan felt his chest tighten with emotion. "Thanks, Mom." They sat together for a while, the quiet hum of the city outside their window. For the first time in years, the apartment felt less like a place of struggle and more like a place of hope. That night, as Ethan lay in bed, he thought about everything Steve had said. Planes are like people. They need all their parts working together to stay in the air. Ethan thought about his mom, about William Thompson, about the mechanics at the workshop. Each of them had played a part in helping him take flight, even if only metaphorically, and now it was his turn to do the same. As he drifted off to sleep, Ethan felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of purpose. The air outside was crisp as Ethan stepped off the bus and walked toward the workshop. The morning sun gleamed against the polished surfaces of the planes inside the open hangar. He had barely slept the night before, his mind buzzing with excitement about returning. The last visit had been eye-opening, and he couldn't wait to learn more. As Ethan entered, Steve spotted him and gave a wave. "Hey, Ethan! Right on time. Ready for another big day?" Ethan grinned, jogging over. "Yeah, I am. What's on the schedule?" Steve rubbed his hands together, a playful smirk crossing his face. "Oh, we've got a treat for you today. Carla's going to show you how to test a plane's electrical system. Think you're up for it?" Ethan's eyes widened. "Really? That sounds awesome." "You bet. Follow me." Carla was crouched by a sleek blue and white jet, holding a multimeter. She looked up as they approached and gave Ethan a warm smile. "Morning, champ. You ready to dive into the fun stuff?" Ethan nodded, his heart pounding with excitement. "Absolutely." She handed him the tool, showing him how to check the voltage and look for any irregularities in the system. Her instructions were clear and patient, and Ethan quickly fell into the rhythm of the task. The workshop bustled around them, but Carla made sure to answer all his questions, never rushing him. "You've got a good eye for detail," Carla said, as Ethan adjusted the tool to test another circuit. "That's important in this line of work." Ethan beamed at the compliment. "Thanks. I really like figuring out how everything works." Carla chuckled. "Well, keep that attitude, and you'll go far." As the day went on, Ethan became more comfortable in the workshop. The once overwhelming noise of engines and tools now felt like the background music of a place he belonged. He started to recognize the other mechanics by name, and a few even stopped by to offer tips or share their own stories. One mechanic, a lanky guy named Marco, leaned against the workbench while Ethan finished testing a wire harness. "You remind me of me when I first started," Marco said, grinning. "Lost, excited, and a little terrified." Ethan laughed nervously. "Yeah, that sounds about right. But look at me now," Marco continued, gesturing to the plane behind him. "I've got grease under my nails and a paycheck that doesn't make me cry. You'll get there too." Ethan's smile grew. The casual camaraderie of the workshop felt good, like being part of a team where everyone wanted to see him succeed. During lunch, Steve joined Ethan at the stack of crates near the hangar doors. They sat quietly for a moment, eating sandwiches and watching the planes parked outside. Finally, Steve broke the silence. "You know," Steve began, "when I first started working on planes, I was just like you. Had no idea what I was doing, but I knew I loved it." Ethan turned to him, intrigued. "How did you get into it?" Steve chuckled, leaning back. "I grew up fixing cars with my dad. We didn't have much money, so if something broke, we had to figure it out ourselves. When I got older, I saw an ad for an apprenticeship at a local airport and thought, why not? Next thing I knew, I was working on planes." "That's amazing," Ethan said. "Do you ever think about flying them?" "Sometimes," Steve admitted. "But I've always been more interested in how they work. That's the beauty of aviation, kid. There's room for everyone: builders, mechanics, pilots. It all comes together to make the magic happen." Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "I think I want to try flying someday. It seems incredible." Steve gave him a knowing smile. "Then you should. Keep working hard, and you'll get there, one step at a time." When Ethan got home that evening, Anna was waiting for him in the kitchen. A savory aroma filled the air, and she turned from the stove with a bright smile. "Perfect timing," she said. "Dinner's almost ready. How was the workshop?" Ethan dropped his backpack by the door and slid into a chair at the table. "It was great. Carla showed me how to test electrical systems, and Steve said I'm picking things up fast." Anna's face softened. "I'm so proud of you, Ethan. I can tell how much this means to you." "It does," Ethan said, his voice firm. "I feel like I'm part of something. And maybe, someday, I could be more than just a kid who fixes planes. I could fly them." Anna's hand froze mid-reach for a plate, and she turned to face him fully. "Fly them?" Ethan hesitated, worried he had said too much. "I mean, it's just an idea, but Steve thinks I could do it if I work hard enough." Anna walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression a mix of pride and wonder. "Sweetheart, if that's your dream, I'll support you every step of the way. You've already shown me you can accomplish amazing things." Ethan looked up at her, feeling a lump form in his throat. "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot." Over the next few weeks, Ethan fell into a routine. He spent his mornings at the workshop and his afternoons helping Anna at home. The weight of their financial struggles began to ease, and their apartment felt less oppressive with the knowledge that they wouldn't be evicted. For the first time in years, they could breathe. Ethan's skills at the workshop continued to grow. He learned how to identify damaged parts, how to clean and maintain equipment, and even how to assist with basic repairs. Steve and Carla were always there to guide him, their patience and encouragement pushing him to do better each day. One afternoon, while Ethan was wiping down a set of tools, Steve approached with a clipboard in hand. His usual grin was replaced with a more serious expression. "Ethan," Steve said, "I've got something I want to talk to you about." Ethan set the tools aside, his heart skipping a beat. "What is it?" "There's a pre-flight inspection tomorrow morning," Steve said. "I want you to help me with it. It's a big responsibility, but I think you're ready." Ethan's eyes widened. "Me? Are you sure?" Steve clapped him on the shoulder. "I'm sure. You've earned this." That night, Ethan could hardly sleep. The thought of helping with an actual pre-flight inspection filled him with equal parts excitement and nerves. He stared at the ceiling, his mind racing with questions. What if he made a mistake? What if he wasn't good enough? But as the hours passed, a quiet determination settled over him. He thought about everything he had learned, about Steve's faith in him, and about Anna's unwavering support. He wasn't the same kid who used to scavenge for cans by the airport fence. He had grown, and he was ready to prove it. The next morning, Ethan arrived at the workshop before sunrise. The plane for the inspection sat on the tarmac, its sleek body glowing faintly under the floodlights. Steve was already there, clipboard in hand. "You ready?" Steve asked, his voice steady. Ethan nodded, his heart pounding. "I'm ready." As they began the inspection, Ethan focused on every detail, checking each component with care. Steve's instructions echoed in his mind, guiding his hands as he worked. For the first time, he felt a sense of confidence, like he truly belonged here. When they finished, Steve gave him a firm pat on the back. "You did good, kid. Real good." Ethan looked up at the plane, a smile spreading across his face. "Thanks, Steve." As the plane taxied down the runway and lifted into the sky, Ethan watched it disappear into the horizon. A sense of pride swelled within him, and for the first time, he allowed himself to believe that the future he dreamed of might actually be within reach. Ethan woke early the next morning, still riding the high of the successful pre-flight inspection. The memory of the plane soaring into the sky played over and over in his mind, filling him with pride and a flicker of hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, he believed his dreams were within reach. Anna was already up, packing a modest lunch for work. She glanced at Ethan as he entered the kitchen, a knowing smile on her face. "How are you feeling this morning?" she asked, setting a sandwich into her tote. Ethan slid into a chair, grinning. "Pretty good. Yesterday was amazing." Anna sat down across from him, her eyes soft with affection. "I'm so proud of you, Ethan. You've come so far. It's like watching you grow into your future right before my eyes." Ethan chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "Thanks, Mom. I just hope I don't mess anything up." Anna reached over, taking his hand. You won't. You've already proven you're capable. Just keep believing in yourself. At the workshop, Ethan was assigned to work on a smaller plane with Carla. She handed him a checklist and a toolbox, her demeanor as cheerful as ever. "Okay, champ," she said, motioning to the aircraft. "We're checking the hydraulics today. It's a little more advanced, but I think you're ready." Ethan's confidence wavered. Hydraulics sounded complicated, more complicated than fuel lines or landing gear. He took a deep breath and nodded, determined not to let Carla down. She guided him through the process, explaining each step in detail. The first few tasks were straightforward, and Ethan found his rhythm quickly. But as they moved on, the steps became more intricate. "Careful here," Carla said, as Ethan reached for a valve. "You need to release the pressure slowly. If you rush it, we'll have a mess on our hands." Ethan nodded, his hands steady as he followed her instructions. But as he moved to the next part, his nerves got the better of him. He twisted the wrong knob, and with a hiss, hydraulic fluid sprayed out in a thin arc. "Whoa!" Carla exclaimed, jumping back. Ethan froze, his heart sinking as he stared at the spreading puddle of fluid. I'm sorry," he stammered. Carla grabbed a rag, her expression calm. "It's okay. It happens." "But I messed up," Ethan said, his voice tight. Carla placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice steady. "Listen, every mechanic in this hangar has made mistakes, some bigger than this. The important thing is to learn from it. Now let's clean this up and fix it together." Ethan nodded slowly, grateful for her patience. As they worked to set things right, he realized that mistakes weren't the end of the world. They were just part of learning. That evening, Ethan returned home feeling a mix of relief and self-doubt. Anna was at the kitchen table, a steaming cup of tea in her hands. She looked up as he walked in, her face immediately creasing with concern. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" she asked. Ethan shrugged, dropping his bag by the door. "I made a mistake at the workshop today. It wasn't huge, but I felt like such an idiot." Anna motioned for him to sit beside her. When he did, she reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Ethan, making mistakes is part of life. What matters is how you handle them." "Carla said the same thing," Ethan admitted. "Then she's a smart woman," Anna said with a small smile. "You're learning something new every day, and that's incredible. Don't be so hard on yourself." Ethan nodded, her words settling in his chest like a balm. Over the next few weeks, Ethan continued to immerse himself in the workshop. Carla and Steve introduced him to new tasks, each more challenging than the last. Ethan learned to take his time, to think through each step carefully. His confidence grew, though he still felt a pang of nervousness every time he tried something unfamiliar. At home, Anna thrived in her new job. She came home each evening with stories of her co-workers and the small victories she found in her work. For the first time in years, she seemed genuinely happy. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, Anna placed a neatly folded paper on the table. Ethan glanced at it, his curiosity piqued. "What's that?" he asked, spearing a bite of pasta. Anna smiled, her eyes sparkling. "It's my first full paycheck. Ethan, I can't tell you how good it feels to be caught up on rent and have something left over." Ethan grinned. "That's amazing, Mom. I'm so proud of you." Anna's smile softened. "I wouldn't have gotten this far without you. We're a team, remember?" Ethan nodded, his heart swelling with pride. One morning, Steve approached Ethan with a thoughtful expression. "How would you feel about shadowing me on a major repair job?" he asked. Ethan's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," Steve replied. "You've been doing great, and I think you're ready for the next step." Ethan hesitated, the memory of his earlier mistake flashing through his mind. But he pushed the doubt aside and nodded. "I'd love to." "Good," Steve said with a grin. "We'll start tomorrow." That night, Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The workshop had become more than just a place to learn. It was a place where he felt valued, where he could see a future beyond the struggles of his past. But with every new challenge came the fear of failure. What if he couldn't keep up? What if he let everyone down? Ethan clenched his fists, willing the doubts away. Carla and Steve believed in him, and so did his mom. It was time he started believing in himself, too. The next day, Ethan arrived at the workshop early, determined to give his best. Steve met him by the plane they would be working on, a larger model than Ethan had tackled before. "Take a deep breath, kid," Steve said, handing him a pair of gloves. "We've got this." As they worked, Ethan focused on every detail, double-checking each step. Steve's steady guidance kept him grounded, and by the time they finished, Ethan felt a surge of accomplishment. "You did good today," Steve said, clapping him on the back. "Keep this up, and you'll be leading these jobs in no time." Ethan grinned, the weight of self-doubt lifting. At home that evening, Ethan shared the day's events with Anna. She listened intently, her face glowing with pride. "You're really doing it, Ethan," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're building a future for yourself." Ethan nodded, a smile tugging at his lips. "And for us, Mom, we're in this together." As they sat together, the quiet hum of the city outside their window, Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, he believed he had the strength to face it. Ethan stood in the workshop, the hum of activity surrounding him. Mechanics moved between planes, the clatter of tools and the murmur of voices filling the air. Today, Steve had assigned Ethan a task he would handle almost entirely on his own, a thorough inspection of a small private jet's engine components. "You've been watching and learning for weeks now," Steve said earlier, clapping Ethan on the back. "I think you're ready to take the lead. I'll be nearby if you need me, but this is your show, kid." Ethan felt the weight of the responsibility settle on his shoulders as he approached the jet. His checklist was tucked into his back pocket, and the toolbox Steve had given him sat at his feet. He rubbed his hands together, took a deep breath, and got to work. The first hour passed smoothly. Ethan checked each component meticulously, his movements careful and precise. He remembered everything Steve and Carla had taught him: double-check connections, ensure no bolts were loose, and report anything that looked even slightly out of place. But as Ethan examined the fuel injector, he noticed something strange. A small crack ran along the edge of the part, barely visible unless you looked closely. His stomach tightened. This was the kind of issue that could go unnoticed and cause major problems later. Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. Should he call Steve over now? Or was this the kind of thing he was supposed to handle himself? The words Steve had said that morning echoed in his mind. "This is your show." He decided to act. Grabbing the replacement injector from the toolbox, Ethan began the delicate process of swapping it out. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he worked, every movement slow and deliberate. By the time Ethan finished, his arms ached and his nerves were frayed, but the injector was replaced perfectly. He wiped his hands on a rag and stepped back to examine his work. Relief washed over him. It looked good. As he double-checked the rest of the engine, Steve approached, a proud grin on his face. "How's it going?" Steve asked, leaning against the wing of the plane. Ethan straightened, his chest swelling with pride. "I found a crack in the injector and replaced it. Everything else checks out." Steve nodded, his eyes scanning the engine. "Good catch, Ethan. That's exactly the kind of attention to detail we need around here." Ethan grinned, the tension in his shoulders easing. That evening, as Ethan walked home, the late summer sun cast long shadows across the pavement. He felt a sense of accomplishment, but it was accompanied by a flicker of doubt. What if he had missed something? What if his work wasn't good enough? When he reached the apartment, Anna was at the stove, humming softly as she stirred a pot of soup. She looked up as he entered, her smile immediate. "How was it today?" she asked, setting down the spoon. Ethan dropped his bag by the door and slid into a chair at the table. "Good. I inspected a whole engine by myself. Steve said I did a great job." Anna's face lit up with pride. "That's amazing, Ethan. I knew you could do it." Ethan hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of the table. But what if I missed something? What if I messed up and didn't realize it? Anna walked over, sitting beside him. She placed a hand on his arm, her voice steady. Ethan, you're learning. Mistakes are part of the process. What matters is that you care enough to do your best. That's how you'll keep getting better. Ethan nodded, her words settling some of the doubt swirling in his chest. The next morning, Ethan returned to the workshop with renewed determination. Steve greeted him with a clipboard and a knowing smile. "Ready for another challenge?" Steve asked, handing him the clipboard. Ethan took it, nodding. "Always." This time, Ethan was assigned to work with Carla on a pre-flight checklist. Together, they inspected the plane's systems, ensuring everything was in perfect condition before it was cleared for takeoff. "You're getting the hang of this," Carla said as they finished up. "Pretty soon, we'll be coming to you for advice." Ethan laughed, the praise boosting his confidence. As the days turned into weeks, Ethan's skills continued to grow. He faced new challenges with a mixture of excitement and apprehension, learning to trust himself and the team around him. One afternoon, Steve pulled Ethan aside, his expression serious but kind. "I want you to know something, Ethan," Steve said. "Every mechanic here started where you are, uncertain, a little scared, but eager to learn. You're doing great, and I think you have a real future in this. Just keep pushing forward." Ethan nodded, the words sinking deep into his heart. At home, Anna was thriving in her new job. She often came home with stories of her co-workers and the small victories she found in her work. One evening, she announced that she had saved enough money to replace the threadbare curtains in their living room, a small but meaningful step toward making their apartment feel more like home. Ethan helped her hang the new curtains, the vibrant fabric brightening the space. As they worked, Anna glanced at him, her eyes filled with warmth. "You've been working so hard, Ethan," she said. "I'm so proud of everything you're accomplishing." Ethan smiled, the words filling him with a sense of purpose. The next big test came when Steve asked Ethan to assist with a major repair on a commercial plane's landing gear. It was a complex job, requiring precision and patience. Ethan worked alongside the senior mechanics, following their lead and asking questions when he was unsure. The task stretched late into the evening, but when they finished, the plane was ready to fly again. As Ethan wiped the grease from his hands, Steve approached, his expression serious. "You did great today," Steve said. "This was one of the toughest jobs we've tackled in a while, and you held your own." Ethan's chest swelled with pride. "Thanks, Steve. I couldn't have done it without you and the team." Steve nodded, clapping him on the shoulder. "That's the right attitude. Remember, Ethan, no one does this alone. We all rely on each other." That night, as Ethan walked home under the glow of the streetlights, he thought about Steve's words. They reminded him of everything he and Anna had been through, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the kindness that had brought them to this point. He wasn't just building a future for himself. He was building a life where he and Anna could finally thrive, supported by the people who believed in them. For the first time, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. The early morning air was cool as Ethan stepped into the hangar, the faint hum of activity already filling the space. Steve was waiting near the pre-flight inspection area, his usual clipboard in hand. But today, there was something different about his demeanor, an air of anticipation that Ethan couldn't quite place. "Morning, kid," Steve called, his voice carrying across the hangar. "Morning, Steve," Ethan replied, quickening his pace. "What's the plan for today?" Steve grinned, tucking the clipboard under his arm. "We've got a special job for you. I've cleared it with Mr. Thompson, and I think you're going to like it." Ethan's brow furrowed, a mix of curiosity and excitement bubbling up. "What kind of job?" Steve motioned for Ethan to follow him outside to the tarmac. There, parked under the rising sun, was a sleek, silver and blue private jet. Its polished surface reflected the morning light, and its engines were silent but brimming with potential. "This," Steve said, gesturing to the jet, is the one we've been prepping all week, and today you're going to help me take it up for a short flight." Ethan stopped in his tracks, his heart pounding. "Wait, you mean I'm going up there?" Steve chuckled, clapping him on the back. "That's right. It's time you saw things from above." Ethan spent the next hour assisting with the final checks, his hands steady despite the excitement coursing through him. Steve walked him through every step, from verifying the fuel levels to testing the navigation equipment. When the time came to board the jet, Ethan hesitated at the foot of the stairs, staring up at the open door. "You coming? Or do I have to fly this thing alone?" Steve teased, his grin widening. Ethan took a deep breath, his nerves dissolving into determination. "I'm coming." He climbed the steps and stepped into the cockpit, his eyes widening at the array of dials, switches, and monitors. It felt surreal, like stepping into a dream. Steve handed him a headset and motioned for him to buckle in. "You'll be my co-pilot today," he said, his tone light but reassuring. Ethan fumbled with the straps, his fingers trembling. When he was securely seated, Steve powered up the engines. The low hum grew into a steady roar, and the vibrations pulsed through the plane. "You ready?" Steve asked, glancing at Ethan. Ethan nodded, his voice catching in his throat. "Yeah, I'm ready." The plane taxied down the runway, and Ethan felt himself press back into his seat as the engines roared to life. In a matter of seconds, the wheels lifted off the ground, and the earth fell away beneath them. Ethan's breath caught in his chest as he looked out the window. The workshop, the hangar, the airport, all of it grew smaller and smaller until it was just a patchwork of buildings and roads below. The horizon stretched endlessly, painted in hues of blue and gold. "This," Steve said, his voice crackling through the headset, "is what it's all about." Ethan couldn't speak. He was too overwhelmed by the beauty of the world from above. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a sense of freedom and possibility that left him awestruck. For the next 30 minutes, Steve guided the plane through gentle turns and climbs, explaining the basics of flight as they went. Ethan listened intently, his nerves replaced by a growing sense of confidence. "Want to try?" Steve asked suddenly, his tone casual. Ethan froze, his eyes widening. "You mean, fly the plane?" Steve nodded, his expression calm. "Just for a bit. I'll be right here with you." Ethan hesitated, his hands hovering over the controls. But when Steve gave him an encouraging nod, he took a deep breath and wrapped his fingers around the yoke. "Okay," Steve said, his voice steady. "Keep it level. Small movements. You've got this." Ethan's hands trembled at first, but as he followed Steve's instructions, the plane responded smoothly. A rush of exhilaration surged through him. He was flying a real plane. "You're a natural," Steve said with a grin. Ethan couldn't help but laugh, the sound filled with pure joy. When they landed back at the airport, Ethan felt like he was walking on air. Steve clapped him on the shoulder as they descended the stairs. "You did great up there," Steve said. "I told you you'd love it." Ethan grinned, his heart still racing. "That was incredible. Thank you, Steve." "Don't thank me," Steve replied. "You earned this." At home that evening, Ethan could hardly contain his excitement as he recounted the day's events to Anna. She listened with wide eyes, her face lighting up with pride at every word. "You flew a plane?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "Just for a little bit," Ethan said, his grin stretching ear to ear. "Steve said I'm a natural." Anna shook her head, her smile softening. "You've come so far, Ethan. I can't even begin to tell you how proud I am of you." Ethan felt a lump form in his throat. "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." Anna reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "You've always had the courage and the heart. This is just the beginning." The next day, Ethan returned to the workshop with a renewed sense of purpose. He threw himself into his tasks, eager to learn everything he could about the planes he now dreamed of flying. Steve noticed the change in him, and pulled him aside during a break. "Ethan," Steve said, his tone serious, "I think it's time we start talking about the next steps. If flying is what you want to do, we can make that happen. Mr. Thompson has connections at a flight school, and I'm willing to recommend you." Ethan stared at him, his heart pounding. "You mean I could really become a pilot?" Steve nodded. "It'll take a lot of hard work and dedication, but if you're willing to put in the effort, there's no reason you can't do it." Ethan's chest swelled with emotion. "I'll do whatever it takes." "Good," Steve said with a grin. "Let's get to work." That night, as Ethan lay in bed, he thought about how far he had come. From scavenging cans by the airport fence to flying a plane, it felt like a different life. But he knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a journey he was ready to embrace with everything he had. Ethan woke before sunrise, the soft light of dawn barely filtering through his bedroom window. Today marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life. The previous evening, Steve had confirmed that Mr. Thompson's recommendation to the flight school had been accepted. Ethan was set to begin a formal training program in aviation fundamentals. As he sat at the small kitchen table with Anna, the weight of the moment began to settle over him. She placed a steaming mug of tea in front of him and sat down, her eyes filled with pride and a hint of worry. "You're nervous," Anna said gently, her hands cradling her own mug. Ethan nodded, tracing the rim of the cup with his finger. "Yeah, I guess I am. What if I'm not good enough? What if I can't keep up?" Anna reached across the table, resting her hand on his. "Ethan, you've worked so hard to get here. Every step of the way, you've proven you can rise to any challenge. You just have to keep believing in yourself." Ethan managed a small smile, her words steadying the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. "Thanks, Mom. I'll do my best." "That's all anyone can ask," Anna said, giving his hand a squeeze. The drive to the flight school was a mix of anticipation and awe. Ethan stared out the window as the city streets gave way to rolling fields and a sprawling campus with towering hangars, training simulators, and runways that seemed to stretch endlessly. Steve met him at the entrance, his usual easy grin in place. "Morning, kid? Ready to take the leap?" Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. "Yeah, I think so." Steve led him through the main building, where students in crisp uniforms moved with purpose. The energy of the place was electric, a constant hum of ambition and focus. "Flight school's no joke," Steve said as they stopped outside a classroom. "You'll be learning about everything: mechanics, navigation, weather patterns, and eventually actual flying. It's a lot, but I know you've got what it takes." Ethan glanced at the rows of desks inside the room, his nerves creeping back. "What if I mess up?" Steve chuckled, clapping him on the back. "Kid, mistakes are part of the process. Trust me, every pilot here has made more than a few. The important thing is to learn and keep moving forward." The first day was a whirlwind of introductions and foundational lessons. Ethan met his instructor, a stern but fair man named Captain Rollins, who radiated authority and experience. The classroom was filled with students of all ages, each with their own reasons for pursuing a career in aviation. As the hours passed, Ethan immersed himself in the material, taking meticulous notes and asking questions when he needed clarity. It was overwhelming at times, but he refused to let the fear of failure hold him back. During a break, a fellow student, a girl named Mia, struck up a conversation with him. "You're new to all this, huh?" she asked, her tone curious but kind. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, I've been working in a workshop for a while, but this is my first step toward flying." Mia smiled, her dark hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. "Same here. My dad's a pilot, so I've been around planing my whole life, but it's a whole different world." "Tell me about it," Ethan said with a laugh. Mia's friendly demeanor put him at ease, and by the time class resumed, he felt less alone in the journey ahead. That evening, Ethan returned home exhausted, but exhilarated. Anna was waiting for him, her face lighting up as he walked through the door. "How was it?" she asked, setting a plate of food on the table. "It was amazing," Ethan said, dropping his bag by the couch. "There's so much to learn, but I think I'm starting to get it. And I met this girl, Mia. She's been around planing her whole life, so I think I can learn a lot from her too." Anna's smile widened. "I'm so glad, Ethan. You deserve to have people around you who share your dreams." Ethan nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. As the weeks passed, Ethan fell into a rhythm. His days were spent at the flight school, studying everything from aerodynamics to emergency procedures. The lessons were challenging, but Ethan's time at the workshop had prepared him to think critically and stay calm under pressure. Steve continued to check in, offering encouragement and advice whenever Ethan felt overwhelmed. Mia became a trusted friend, and the two often studied together, quizzing each other on technical terms and sharing their aspirations. But not everything came easily. One afternoon, during a simulator exercise, Ethan struggled to execute a proper landing. The simulated plane jolted and veered off the runway, drawing a low groan from Captain Rollins. "Parker," Rollins said, his voice firm, "you need to anticipate the descent earlier. You're waiting too long to adjust." Ethan nodded, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. "Yes, sir. I'll do better next time." As the other students filtered out of the simulator room, Ethan stayed behind, running the exercise again and again until he finally nailed the landing. At home, Anna noticed Ethan's exhaustion, but also the fire in his eyes. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, she turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Ethan, I know this is hard work," she said gently, "but I've never seen you so passionate about something. You're doing incredible." Ethan leaned back, letting her words sink in. "It's tough, but I love it, Mom. I really do." Anna's smile was soft but proud. "Then keep going. You're on your way to something great." The turning point came during a practical flight assessment. Each student was tasked with taking a small plane up for a short flight, under the watchful eye of Captain Rollins. Ethan's nerves were on edge as he climbed into the cockpit. The familiar hum of the engines surrounded him, both comforting and daunting. "You've got this, Parker," Rollins said, his voice steady through the headset. Ethan took a deep breath, his hands gripping the controls. As he guided the plane down the runway and into the air, a sense of calm washed over him. The training, the workshops, the late nights studying it all came together in that moment. The flight was smooth, and when Ethan landed the plane with precision, Rollins gave a rare nod of approval. "Good work, Parker," he said. "Keep this up, and you'll make a fine pilot." That night, Ethan shared the news with Anna, his excitement spilling over. "I did it, Mom," he said, his grin stretching ear to ear. Rollins said, "I'm improving." Anna hugged him tightly, tears brimming in her eyes. "I never doubted you for a second." As they sat together, the weight of their journey hit Ethan. Every struggle, every moment of doubt, it had all led to this. And for the first time, he truly believed that his dream of becoming a pilot was within reach. Ethan stood on the edge of the tarmac, the cool morning air brushing against his face. Today was the culmination of months of hard work, perseverance, and learning. He was about to complete his first solo flight. It was the final requirement in his introductory training, the step that would officially mark him as a pilot in training. Steve had come to see him off, leaning casually against a nearby hangar. "How are you feeling?" he asked, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Ethan adjusted his cap nervously. "Excited, nervous, maybe both." "That's normal," Steve said. "But you've got this. You've worked for this moment, Ethan. Trust yourself, and trust the plane." Ethan nodded, Steve's words grounding him. He had spent hours preparing for this, every lesson and every mistake building to this moment. Mia jogged up from the direction of the observation deck, grinning. "I'm here to watch you crush it," she said, giving him a playful nudge. Ethan chuckled, though his stomach churned with nerves. "Thanks. No pressure, right?" "None at all," she teased. As Ethan climbed into the cockpit, the familiar hum of the engine filled his ears, a steady sound that calmed his racing thoughts. He went through his pre-flight checklist meticulously, double-checking each step before signaling to the instructor on the ground. "Clear for takeoff, Parker," Captain Rollins' voice crackled through the radio. Ethan gripped the controls, his heart pounding as he taxied the plane onto the runway. The stretch of asphalt ahead seemed endless, but beyond it lay the sky open, vast, and calling to him. "Here we go," he murmured to himself, pushing the throttle forward. The plane roared to life, its wheels picking up speed as it raced down the runway. Ethan felt the familiar pull as the plane lifted, leaving the ground behind. And then, he was airborne. The world below unfolded in stunning detail. Roads snaked through green fields, rivers glittered like ribbons of silver, and the horizon stretched endlessly in every direction. Ethan's breath caught as he leveled the plane, the realization washing over him. He was flying. Alone. He followed the flight plan precisely, his hands steady on the controls. Captain Rollins' voice occasionally crackled through the radio, offering guidance and reassurance, but mostly it was just Ethan and the open sky. As he banked gently to the left, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the cockpit in golden light. Ethan couldn't help but smile, the weight of his doubts and fears melting away. This was what he had dreamed of. Back on the ground, Anna stood by the observation deck, her hands clenched tightly around the strap of her purse. Steve stood beside her, his demeanor calm but watchful. "He's doing great," Steve said, glancing at her with a reassuring nod. Anna exhaled a shaky breath, her eyes never leaving the plane. "I still can't believe this is happening, that my son is up there flying a plane." Steve smiled. "You should be proud. He's worked harder than anyone I've seen in a long time, and he's got the heart for it. That's what matters most." The final leg of the flight brought Ethan back toward the runway. His hands tightened on the controls as he prepared for the landing. He replayed every lesson in his mind: adjust the throttle, keep the descent steady, and trust the plane. The wheels touched down smoothly, the gentle bump sending a rush of relief and triumph through him. He guided the plane to a stop, his chest heaving with exhilaration. As Ethan climbed out of the cockpit, he was met with cheers from the observation deck. Steve and Mia waved enthusiastically, and Anna clapped, tears streaming down her face. "You did it, kid," Steve called, jogging over to meet him. Ethan grinned, his heart swelling with pride. "I can't believe it. I actually did it." Steve clapped him on the shoulder, his smile wide. "Believe it, Ethan. This is just the beginning." Anna approached, her steps quick and her face glowing with pride. She wrapped Ethan in a tight hug, her voice thick with emotion. "I am so proud of you, Ethan. You've come so far." Ethan hugged her back, his throat tight. "Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." That evening, back at home, Ethan and Anna sat at the kitchen table, the weight of the day settling over them. The small apartment seemed brighter somehow, as if the walls themselves reflected their shared pride and joy. Anna set a small cake on the table, its frosting uneven, but lovingly made. "I know it's not much," she said, "but I wanted to celebrate your big day." Ethan laughed, the sound light and free. "It's perfect, Mom. Thank you." They shared the cake, the quiet hum of the city outside their window. For the first time in years, the future felt tangible, a place where hope and hard work could lead to something greater. A few days later, Ethan returned to the workshop, where Steve handed him a well-worn flight logbook. "Every pilot needs one of these," Steve said, his tone serious but warm. "This is where your journey begins. Every flight, every lesson, it all goes in here." Ethan took the logbook, running his fingers over the embossed cover. It felt heavy, not just in weight, but in meaning. "Thanks, Steve," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. Steve smiled. No need to thank me. You've earned it. As Ethan walked home that evening, the logbook tucked safely under his arm, he thought about everything that had brought him to this moment. The struggles, the sacrifices, the unexpected kindnesses, all of it had shaped him into the person he was today. When he reached the apartment, Anna was waiting for him by the window, her face soft with contentment. "How does it feel?" she asked as he stepped inside. Ethan held up the logbook, a smile spreading across his face. "It feels like the start of something amazing." Anna hugged him tightly, her voice barely a whisper. "You've worked so hard for this, Ethan, and I know you're going to do incredible things." Ethan closed his eyes, letting the moment wash over him. For the first time in his life, he felt like the sky wasn't just a distant dream, it was his future. And he was ready to soar. If you enjoyed this story and want more heartfelt tales of resilience, kindness, and hope, don't forget to subscribe. Stay tuned for more inspiring journeys and stories that lift your spirit. Your support means the world. Thank you for being part of this adventure.